Hey, it's Matt from the A-Team, and today we're gonna go from this to this by diffusing our light. You ready? Let's go. Last week we talked about light placement. This week we're going to talk about light quality. That refers to the brightness, specular highlight, and the shadow roll-off. And this is all done by modifying your light. Simply put, there's hard light and soft light. Hard light is achieved by using a small light relative to your subject. This creates harsh shadows. For example, the sun, while it is huge, if you look up in the sky, it's relatively small to you. Soft light, on the other hand, is achieved through a relatively big source compared to your subject. This creates a nice blurred line between the light and shadow of the face. For example, your phone is super small, but when it's right next to your hand, it creates a smooth transition between light and dark. Soft light is measured in two different ways. First is the distance of the transition between light and shadow. This is called fall off. Hard lights create hard edges, which is called fast fall off. On the other hand, soft lights create blurred lines, which is called slow fall off. The other way is highlights. This is when a light source is reflected onto a subject. Depending on the reflectiveness of its surface, you'll either see a bright highlight or a dim highlight. And usually, the softer the light, the softer the highlight will be. Overall, a soft light is more preferred over a hard light because it simply looks more pleasing to see on a subject. Some lights are naturally pretty big, like fluorescent lights, but in most cases, lights are pretty small. They could be your household lights, LED diodes, HMIs, and they give off a pretty harsh light. But there is a way to make them softer. Take a look at your chip-on-board LED light. It's giving off a pretty nice light. In some scenarios, this is okay, but in most, it's a bit too harsh. Now, if you want to make the light source softer, you have to make the light source bigger, and there's two ways of doing that. The first way to diffuse light is using a sheet of diffusion. So what we're setting up right now is a sheet of 250. It's nice, industry standard. One thing to keep in mind is to make sure your sheet of diffusion is about 2 to 3 feet away from your light source to fill the entire frame. Otherwise, you're going to create a hot spot on your sheet of diffusion, and it's not really going to do anything. Another way of setting up diffusion is using silk. In this case, we're using a 4x4 of magic cloth. The nice thing about this is it's a lot thicker, so it'll diffuse your light even more. So what we have set up right now is called a double break, and it's basically just taking the light, shooting it through one layer of diffusion. We can still see there's a hot spot on this sheet, so we're gonna add a second layer, and that basically just creates a nice even spread of light on the subject. Now, if you're really on a budget, one thing you could do is use a standard t-shirt. It's not industry standard, but if you're in a tight pinch, this surprisingly works well. One thing to keep in mind is the material of your diffusion. The thinner the diffusion, the easier it will be for that light to pass through and hit your subject. The thicker the diffusion, the more light struggles to get to that subject. So the next setup we have is a softbox, specifically a Light Dome 2. The cool thing about this light is it comes with 2 sheets of diffusion built inside. One inside near the center and one out here. And they give you a super nice clean layer of soft light. So another way to diffuse light is to bounce it. So what we're doing here is we're shining the light at a white surface, which is a lot bigger than our single source light. And the light coming from this light bounces off the surface and onto our talent. Another thing we can do to make it even softer is to point the light directly at the bounce, reflect it back onto the talent, but between the talent and that bounce is magic cloth. This is what's known as a book light because you're creating literally a book of light. The nice thing about a book light is it can be made out of any material. Time for a recap. If you're aiming for soft light, try diffusing your light once or multiple times until the desired softness. Also, try mixing and matching which light is hard and which light is soft. Oftentimes, the best setups are a mix of both. Question of the week, how do you soften your light? Comment below for a chance to win a cool Aputure MC. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to follow us on YouTube and on social media. Links down below. I've been Matt with the A-Team. Thanks for watching and happy shooting.